Hey everyone, Dave Durante here from our Power Monkey headquarters. Today we're going to be going over some kipping muscle up common errors and potentially how to fix them. First common error that I normally see is that the swing is not put enough emphasis on. I really want people to understand that the swing, if we can understand how to create momentum, how to generate power, it can create a more efficient turnover. So when we're doing the swing, a key component is to make sure that you can see your toes out in front before you initiate any pull. Using your toes as a reference point, basically in line with your eyes, is a great way to make sure that your body is rising in unison. Normally what we hear is an exercise here when we initiate the pull as a hips to rings. Let me get the hips to rings as I initiate that pull. It's a great idea and concept of what it normally does is it neglects to what your legs are doing. Legs normally have a tendency to drop down as you get those hips to the rings, which means that they become dead weight. Instead of thinking about hips to rings, what I prefer to think about is trying to get the whole body to rise together in unison. So a starter exercise with something like this would be a horizontal ring row. Now many of you are probably doing this exercise, but instead of doing it with your fixed feet, I'd rather you think about doing it with a spotter. So instead of a horizontal ring row, fixed feet, let's try to be thinking about doing it as a spotted horizontal ring row. Now a spotted horizontal ring row will require the spotter to be holding around your ankles and to be rising and lowering the body as you initiate the pull, which means your body is rising and lowering in unison from top to bottom. This way, your center of mass becomes much higher as you start to initiate your turnover. We can take this more simplified exercise and apply it to a swinging component into our swinging horizontal ring row. Now, this is something that takes a little bit of time to master, but I guarantee you, if you can understand the timing and getting the body to rise in unison, you're going to be in a much better place to actually sit up when it's time to turn over. Another common error with the muscle up is that when the pull is initiated, there's a tendency for, yes, the torso to be rising, trying to get into that catch position on top of the rings, but there's a neglect again to what the lower half is doing. So instead of having the lower half work in unison, same direction as what the upper half is doing, there's a tendency to let the legs to continue to rise. This is not good. We don't want the legs to continue to rise once the pull is initiated. What will happen here is that if the torso is rising and the legs continue to rise, your legs end up working against the direction of your torso. Not great. So it becomes really hard to actually be able to find a catch position. So a nice little drill here to be working on making sure that the whole body is working in the same circular direction is a turnover drill. Now, many of you have probably tried a turnover drill before, closer down towards the ground, maybe with some plates stacked on your sides with your hips running right between those plates, aggressive with the sitting up action, trying to get your hands down to those plates. A great exercise, but what it does, it only focuses on what the torso is doing. So with this particular drill, we want, yes, the torso to be rising, but we also want the lower half to be working as well. If you're only working with the plate drill, you end up neglecting the part that becomes the biggest issue for most people. So yes, I like the drill down on the ground, but if you're having trouble with this idea of upper half and lower half are working against each other, I prefer you to try a more advanced drill, and that's with a little bit of elevation. So instead of sitting down on the ground with your hands between the plates, let's try to set up some boxes. On their 24 side normally works well, running a bench right between them, comfortably enough so you can fit your shoulder between them, starting in a hollow position, rocking back and forth with arms overhead. What we're trying to do here is basically mimic the front part of the swing. And from here, we would sit up aggressively from the torso, swing the hands down to the boxes. I like to hear an audible sound, so make sure that you're impacting those boxes aggressively, which will tell me that you're sitting up aggressively. And at the same time, we want to be thinking about scooping those heels back towards the bench as aggressively as you can to finish in a position where our hips are open, our eyes are forward, and we can almost walk out of the position. If we can do this, it'll tell me, one, that we're finishing in a really aggressive position from that upper half, but also that the lower half is working in the same direction so that when we catch, we're in a much more efficient position. So this particular drill might seem a little counterintuitive to some of the other things you've heard me say in the past, but it can be really important for someone that might have trouble with their turnover. And it has to do basically with physics. If you go from a long lever to a short lever, it's going to help with rotation. It's something we utilize in the gymnastics world endlessly when it comes to flipping and twisting. So what we're going to do here is use a long lever on our swing, making sure we're at our absolute length, toes out in front, keeping those eyes on those toes. And when it's time to react, we're going to think about bringing the knees into the chest, which will create a shortened lever, which will facilitate a faster turnover. So this particular drill is for the athlete out there that has a slow turnover. If you find yourself trying to turn over and having a hard time feeling like things are moving through mud as you get into the bottom part of that dip, this can potentially help. Faster turnover can go from a long lever to a short lever. So as we watch this particular drill, watching the toes, as soon as it's time to react, bringing the knees deeper into the chest can help with a faster turnover. Now this particular drill is for the athletes out there that have trouble linking reps together. Now if you're great at 1 rep, maybe 2 or 3, and then fatigue sets in, I'd really like you to spend some additional time on the descent. What happens on the way down matters as much as the way up. What we're trying to do is create efficiency on the way down so we can prep for the next repetition as quickly as possible. Essentially what we're looking for here is from the top part of our support position, we want to be coming back down and mimicking the front part of that swing as quickly as possible so that gravity can pull us back into the back part of the swing efficiently and quickly so that we don't have to force anything. If you're an athlete that comes down vertical, that you come down straight back down, you feel like you hit like a ton of bricks and you don't have any swing, you're having to start that swing over and over again after every repetition. Not great for longevity, not great for high volume type workouts. So what we want to try to do is from the top part of that support, 2 things are happening. Shoulders are going to lean back as our hips and feet push forward. What this does, it basically mimics the front part of that hollow swing as quickly as possible. And again, like I said, allows us gravity to pull down right into the back part of that swing. Now you see athletes do this a couple of different ways. One, you'll see higher level athletes do this more from a locked out position. Now at first, I would prefer you to be thinking about doing this from the bottom of the dip. I think it creates a little bit more comfort, it creates a little bit more control as to what's going down as you come through that position. So instead of starting from a support position, as you might see some higher level athletes do, start from the bottom part of the dip. Lean those shoulders back, be aggressive about pushing those hips and feet forward, and allow gravity to pull you back into the back part of the swing. Now what I don't want to see here is pushing the hips and shoulders back. It's something that we can stay away from. You may see some athletes try to do this. In the gymnastics world, we call this a cast or a bail, but I would really highly encourage you to stay away from this type of action unless you have a really high-level gymnastics background. The amount of stress that it puts on your elbows, shoulders, lower back is unnecessary for what we're trying to create. The most efficient, safe, and beneficial in terms of efficiency standpoint will be to make sure the hips and feet are forward, shoulders are back, and allowing that backswing to be created from the momentum of the down part of the swing. Let's see if you can do that, scooping shape, that front part of the swing as efficiently as you can. So if you're someone that wants to work on this particular descent drill time and time again, instead of having to do multiple muscle-up reps, here's an easy drill down closer to the ground that can be helpful, and they can get some reps under your belt that you can eventually apply on the higher rings. Lower the rings to around hip height, and ideally you want to have something soft underneath you, a yoga mat, a soft mat, especially when you're learning this. We're going to mimic the same thing that we saw on the higher rings from the bottom part of the dip. You can crouch down to a nice tuck position, keep those rings nice and close to the body in the bottom part of your dip, and from here what we're going to do is push the hips and feet forward, shoulders back, punch those rings out in front of us, basically again mimicking the front part of that hollow swing as quickly as possible and landing in that hollow. First couple of times you do this, you might land a little bit heavy. So again, that soft cushion underneath you will help. Over time, you'll become a little bit more understanding on how the control happens. And this will be something that over time, the more reps you got under your belt, you'll be able to apply to the actual muscle up. Hey everyone, thanks a lot for watching this video today on Kipping Muscle Ups. Please like and subscribe to the Power Monkey channel so we can create more content for you guys. Please also send us your videos. We want to see how you're doing with these progressions. We'll comment on them to make sure that we're getting the most out of them. Please send us. We want to help out as much as we can.